I arrived at my parents' house with a homemade chocolate cake I spent 3 hours making for my mom's birthday. The moment I walked in, my father Gerald looked up from his recliner and immediately said, "Don't cause drama, just leave it and go." Before I could respond, my mother Linda took the cake from my hands, laughed mockingly, and set it directly on the kitchen floor for their golden retriever Murphy. "At least he'll enjoy it," she said with cruel satisfaction. I stood frozen, watching Murphy sniff at my carefully crafted birthday gift. I drove home in complete silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The humiliation burned in my chest like acid. 3 hours I had spent in my kitchen, measuring ingredients, testing the frosting, making sure the layers were perfectly even. I had imagined my mother's face lighting up when she saw it, maybe even getting a genuine hug for the first time in months. Instead, I watched my birthday gift become dog food. By the time I reached my apartment, my girlfriend Sarah was already home from her shift at the medical clinic. She took one look at my face and immediately knew something terrible had happened. I collapsed into our worn leather couch and told her everything. How my father barely looked up from his football game, how my mother snatched the cake like it was contaminated, how they both acted like my presence was an unwelcome interruption. Sarah sat beside me, her hand on my shoulder, and then she said something that made my blood run cold. "Tony, I need to tell you about something that happened at the grocery store last week." She had been buying vegetables in the produce section when she overheard my cousin Beth talking loudly to another woman near the bananas. Beth was going on about how irresponsible I was, how I never helped my family, how I was 32 years old and still living with my girlfriend because I couldn't afford my own place. The other woman was asking questions, and Beth kept elaborating about what a disappointment I was to my parents. I wanted to say something. Sarah continued, her voice getting quieter. "I wanted to tell her about all the money you send them every month, about how you covered their emergency room bill last year, about the new washing machine you bought them, but I didn't want to cause problems in your family." The room started spinning around me. I stumbled to my desk and pulled out my laptop, opening my online banking. There it was, month after month for the past 3 years, $800 transferred to my parents' account on the 15th of every month, like clockwork, sometimes more when they called with emergencies. I scrolled through the transaction history, my stomach sinking deeper with each entry. September, $800 regular payment, plus $500 when Mom called crying about their mortgage being behind. August, $800 regular payment, plus $300 when Dad said their air conditioning broke. July, $800 regular payment, plus $700 when they needed help with property taxes. In 3 years, I had given them almost $30,000. I clicked over to our joint savings account, the one I had set up specifically to help them with emergencies. My parents had been making regular withdrawals, but not for emergencies. $200 at Romano's Italian restaurant, $400 at Ashley Furniture, $150 at Paradise Day Spa, $300 at Best Buy. They were living off my money and then telling my extended family that I was a deadbeat who never helped anyone. Sarah leaned over my shoulder, looking at the screen. "Tony, this is insane. You've been supporting them completely, and they're telling everyone you're irresponsible." The worst part was remembering all the family gatherings where relatives would make comments. "Tony, you really should help your parents more. When I was your age, I made sure my family was taken care of. Your parents sacrificed so much raising you kids." And through every single one of these conversations, my mother and father would nod sadly, looking like martyred saints suffering through an ungrateful son. I thought back to my Uncle Kevin's retirement party 6 months ago. Multiple relatives had pulled me aside to lecture me about family responsibility. My Aunt Margaret had actually said, "Your parents are getting older, Tony. They need to know their children care about them." All while my father was wearing a brand new Rolex, and my mother was carrying a designer purse I had indirectly paid for. The financial abuse was bad enough, but the character assassination was devastating. They had systematically destroyed my reputation with our entire extended family while taking my money every single month. They had created a narrative where they were the suffering, abandoned parents, and I was the selfish son who cared only about himself. Sarah pulled up their Facebook profiles on her phone. My mother's recent posts showed her at expensive restaurants, getting professional manicures, showing off new jewelry. My father had posted photos from a weekend trip to Napa Valley just last month. The comments were full of family members praising them for treating themselves and enjoying their golden years. Golden years funded entirely by their son's hard work, while they painted him as worthless. "How long has this been going on?" Sarah asked. I calculated back to when the monthly payments started. 3 years. Ever since Dad had that minor heart episode and Mom called me sobbing about medical bills. Except now I realized there probably never were any overwhelming medical bills. His insurance covered everything except a small copay. They had used his health scare to manipulate me into establishing a pattern of regular financial support, then built their lifestyle around that income while destroying my character to anyone who would listen. The cruelest part was understanding how calculated it all was. They didn't just happen to treat me badly while taking my money. They deliberately created a false narrative about my character to justify their treatment of me. If everyone believed I was selfish and irresponsible, then their coldness toward me seemed reasonable. They had engineered a situation where they could abuse me financially and emotionally while appearing to be the victims. I closed the laptop and stared at the wall. 3 years of my life. 3 years of working overtime to make sure I could send them money. 3 years of declining social activities because I needed to budget for their support. 3 years of believing I was doing something good and meaningful, all while they were using my generosity to fund their comfortable lifestyle and telling everyone I was a failure. The next morning, I woke up with a sick feeling in my stomach that wouldn't go away. Sarah had already left for work, leaving a note that she loved me and we would figure this out together. But I needed to understand exactly how deep this betrayal went. I decided to call my Uncle Robert, my father's brother. Robert had always been the family truth-teller, the one person who didn't sugarcoat anything. If anyone would give me straight answers about my parents' financial situation, it would be him. "Tony, good to hear from you," Robert said when he picked up. "How are things going?" "I'm doing well, Uncle Robert. I was actually calling to ask about Mom and Dad. Are they doing okay financially these days?" Robert chuckled. "Are you kidding? They're doing better than they have in years. Ever since your grandmother Helen left them that $45,000, they've been living pretty comfortably. Your dad was just telling me they're thinking about booking one of those Alaska cruise packages. Good for them, you know. After all those years of struggling, they deserve to enjoy themselves." The phone slipped in my hand. Grandmother Helen had died 8 months ago. 2 weeks after her funeral, my parents had called me in tears, saying they were overwhelmed with funeral expenses and asking for $2,000 to help them get back on their feet. I had transferred the money immediately, no questions asked. The inheritance. I managed to say, "When did they receive that?" "Oh, it came through pretty quickly after the will was settled. Maybe 7 months ago. Your father deposited it right away. He showed me the bank statement because he was so excited. Smart of them to put it in that joint account so they both have access." The joint account. The same account I had been contributing to for 3 years. They had deposited grandmother's inheritance into the account that contained my monthly support payments, mixing her money with mine, then continued accepting my contributions while sitting on $45,000. "Robert, did they mention being financially stressed recently? Like, needing help with bills or anything?" "Stressed? Hell no. Linda was just showing off her new diamond earrings at your cousin's wedding last month. Said they were celebrating their improved situation." "Why do you ask?" I made up some excuse about wanting to help them if they needed it, and ended the call quickly. Then I immediately dialed my Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister. Patricia answered on the second ring, sounding delighted to hear from me. "Tony, what a nice surprise. Your mother was just telling me how well you're doing." "She was. Oh yes, she's very proud of your success. She says you've really learned to manage money well and live within your means. She's always bragging about how smart and independent you are." This was the exact opposite of what she had been telling other family members. "Aunt Patricia, has she mentioned anything about their financial situation lately?" "You mean how well they're doing?" "She's been positively glowing about their financial planning. Just last week she bought this gorgeous $700 purse and told me it was because they finally learned to budget properly. She gets those manicures every week now and says it's her reward for being financially responsible. $700 for a purse while she cried poverty to me. Weekly manicures while claiming they couldn't afford their mortgage. Has she said anything about me recently? About whether I visit enough or help them out?" Patricia's tone changed slightly. Well, now that you mention it, she did say something a bit concerning. She told me you don't call or visit anymore, that you're too busy with your own life to care about family. I told her that's just how young people are these days, always focused on their careers and relationships. But she seemed genuinely hurt by it. There it was, the carefully crafted lie designed to make me look bad to extended family. While taking my money every month, my mother was telling her sister that I was neglectful and didn't care about family. She was positioning herself as the hurt, abandoned mother, while using my financial support to buy luxury items. Patricia, when she says I don't help them out, what exactly does she mean? Oh, you know how parents are. They always want more attention from their children. She mentioned that you never offer to help with expenses or anything practical like that. But honestly, Tony, I think that's unfair of her. You're building your own life. You shouldn't be expected to support your parents financially at your age. The irony was suffocating. My aunt was defending me against accusations that were completely false, not knowing that I had been supporting them extensively while being painted as selfish for not doing exactly what I was already doing. After hanging up with Patricia, I sat in my car in the parking lot of my office building, trying to process what I had learned. My parents had inherited $45,000 7 months ago. They had hidden this inheritance while continuing to accept my monthly support payments. They had used my money and grandmother's money to fund a lifestyle of restaurants, shopping trips, and luxury purchases. And throughout this entire time, they had been telling different family members different stories about my character and involvement in their lives. To some relatives, I was irresponsible and never helped. To others, I was successful but neglectful. The common thread was that I was always the problem, never the solution. I called my office and told them I needed a personal day, then drove to the public library to use their computers and research my grandmother's will. It was a matter of public record, and I found it within an hour. Grandmother Helen had left my parents exactly $45,000, with no conditions or restrictions. She had also left $10,000 to Jessica and $10,000 to me, but I had never received any notification about an inheritance. I called the probate attorney whose name was on the documents. Mr. Stevens, this is Tony Matthews. I believe my grandmother, Helen Matthews, left me something in her will, but I never received any paperwork about it. The attorney put me on hold for several minutes, then came back with confusion in his voice. Mr. Matthews, your inheritance was paid out 7 months ago. The check was sent to the address your parents provided for you. What address did they provide? He gave me my parents' address. They had intercepted my $10,000 inheritance and kept it for themselves. But the legal theft was almost secondary to the emotional manipulation. They had used grandmother's death as an opportunity to extract more money from me, claiming funeral expenses and financial hardship while sitting on a substantial inheritance. They had stolen my portion of that inheritance, and they had continued this charade for 8 months, while I sent them money I could barely afford, believing I was helping grieving parents who were struggling. The level of premeditation was staggering. This wasn't just casual selfishness or poor judgment. They had systematically planned to defraud me while destroying my reputation and relationships. I drove home and found Sarah making lunch in our kitchen. When I told her what I had discovered, she sat down heavily in our kitchen chair. Tony, this isn't just about money anymore. They're actively trying to isolate you from your family by making everyone think you're a bad person, and they're stealing from you on multiple levels. She was right. This was psychological warfare designed to keep me dependent on their approval while they enriched themselves at my expense. Every dollar I sent them made their lives more comfortable, while they told everyone I was selfish. Every family gathering where relatives criticized me was a result of lies my parents had spread while cashing my checks. I was funding my own character assassination. By Thursday of that week, I couldn't focus on anything at work. My mind kept circling back to all the lies, all the money, all the family members who thought I was a disappointment. I decided to drive by my parents' house unannounced, hoping to catch them in a normal moment and maybe have a real conversation about what was happening. What I found in their driveway made my heart stop. A brand new silver Lexus SUV sat next to my father's truck, still wearing temporary dealer plates. Through the kitchen window, I could see my sister Jessica sitting at the table with our parents. My mother was opening a bottle of champagne while my father spread out a stack of papers in front of Jessica. I had walked into some kind of celebration. My father spotted me through the window and his expression immediately turned dark. He stormed outside, slamming the front door behind him. "What are you doing skulking around our house like some kind of stalker, Tony? I came to talk to you and Mom." "Whose Lexus is that?" Before he could answer, Jessica emerged from the house, looking guilty and defensive. She avoided making eye contact with me. "Tony, I can explain this." "Explain what, exactly?" My mother joined us on the front porch, still holding her champagne glass. "Jessica just bought her first house. We're celebrating her achievement, something you might understand if you ever accomplished anything meaningful. She bought a house." I looked at my sister, who was 28 and worked as a dental hygienist. "Jess, that's great, but how did you afford a house in this market?" The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. Jessica finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mom and Dad have been helping me save for a down payment." "Helping you how?" My father stepped between us. "That's none of your business, Tony. What we do for Jessica is between us and her." But Jessica looked like she was about to be sick. "Tony, they've been giving me $5,000 every month for the past 2 years to help me build a future. And they just gave me $20,000 for the down payment." The math hit me like a truck. $5,000 a month for 2 years was $120,000, plus $20,000 for the down payment. My parents had given Jessica $140,000 while taking $24,000 from me over the same period. But worse than the financial disparity was what this revealed about their priorities and planning. "You've been giving her $5,000 a month while taking $800 from me." My mother's voice turned vicious. "Jessica appreciates what we do for her. She visits every weekend, calls us daily, and treats us with respect. You show up here acting like you're doing us some huge favor with your little monthly checks." "Little monthly checks? Mom, I've given you almost $30,000 over 3 years. Gerald stepped closer to me, his face red with anger. "Jessica is buying a house and starting a family. You're 32 years old and still renting an apartment and playing house with some girl. We're investing in the child who has a real future." The cruelty of his words was breathtaking, but Jessica looked horrified. "Dad, you told me Tony was doing well financially and didn't need help. You said he never offered you anything and was focused only on himself, because that's true," my mother snapped. "Tony has never voluntarily helped us with anything. We have to ask him for every penny, and he acts like it's a burden." "That's not true," Jessica said, her voice getting stronger. "Mom, if Tony's been giving you $800 every month for 3 years, that's almost $30,000. That's more than most people make in a year." "Jessica, don't you dare side with him over us," Linda interrupted. "We sacrificed everything for you children. Every decision we made was about giving you opportunities we never had." But Jessica was putting pieces together. "You told me the money you were giving me came from Dad's retirement and your savings. You never said Tony was contributing to the family finances, because he wasn't contributing enough to matter," Gerald said dismissively. $800 a month doesn't go very far these days. It goes far enough to buy Mom a $700 purse," I said quietly. Jessica's face went white. "What $700 purse?" Linda tried to deflect. "That's irrelevant. Jessica, we're celebrating your house today. Don't let your brother ruin this moment with his jealousy and resentment." But Jessica was looking at the Lexus in the driveway, then back at our parents. "Whose car is that really?" The silence stretched out until Gerald finally answered. "We bought it for you as a housewarming present. You bought me a $60,000 car. You deserve nice things, sweetheart. You've worked hard and shown us respect and appreciation." Jessica turned to me, and I could see the realization dawning in her eyes. "Tony, exactly how much have you been giving them?" $800 every month for 3 years, plus extra for emergencies. Last month it was an additional $500 for their mortgage payment. But they told me their mortgage was paid off 2 years ago. The lies were unraveling faster than my parents could manage them. Jessica was discovering that she had been unknowingly participating in a system that exploited her brother while enriching her. Every dollar they gave her had partially come from money they had guilted me into providing. "Jessica, don't listen to him," my mother said desperately. "He's trying to manipulate you and cause problems in our family." But Jessica was looking at all of us with new understanding. "You've been taking money from Tony and giving it to me, and you never told either of us what you were doing. We were helping both of our children according to their needs, Gerald said. Tony makes good money and can afford to help his family. You needed assistance getting started in life. But you told me Tony was selfish and never helped anyone, because the amount he gives doesn't reflect what he could afford to give, Linda said, her voice getting shriller. He makes $70,000 a year and acts like $800 a month is some enormous sacrifice. Jessica stared at our mother. $800 a month is almost 25% of someone's take-home pay. How is that not a sacrifice? I felt a surge of gratitude toward my sister for defending me, but also sadness that she was discovering how manipulative our parents really were. Gerald tried to regain control of the conversation. Both of you are missing the point. Family helps family. Tony helps us, we help Jessica, and everyone benefits. This isn't complicated, except Tony doesn't benefit, Jessica pointed out, and he didn't know he was indirectly funding my house and car, because he would have made it about himself, Linda said. Everything is always about Tony and his hurt feelings. The projection was stunning. They had made every family interaction about rewarding Jessica and punishing me, but somehow I was the one who made everything about myself. Jessica looked at the house papers in her hands, then at the Lexus, then at me. I can't accept this knowing where the money really came from. Jessica Marie, you will not disrespect us like this, my mother warned. We are your parents, and we know what's best for this family. But Jessica was done being manipulated. What's best for this family would be honesty. Tony, I had no idea you were supporting them. If I had known, I never would have accepted their money. As I drove home that evening, I realized that my parents had created a system where they could exploit me financially while rewarding Jessica for being the good child. They had kept us both in the dark about their full financial picture, ensuring that neither of us could make informed decisions about the family dynamics. But Jessica's reaction gave me hope. Unlike our parents, she was capable of recognizing unfairness and choosing integrity over personal benefit. It was time to stop funding this corrupt system entirely. That weekend, I decided I needed to understand the full scope of how my parents had damaged my reputation. If I was going to confront this situation completely, I needed to know every lie they had told and every relationship they had poisoned. I started with Amanda, my ex-girlfriend from 2 years ago. We had been together for 18 months when she suddenly broke up with me, citing concerns about my reliability and family issues. The breakup had devastated me because it seemed to come out of nowhere. We had been talking about moving in together when she abruptly ended things. I called Amanda and asked if we could meet for coffee. She agreed, though she sounded surprised to hear from me. We met at a small cafe downtown where we used to go when we were dating. Amanda looked good, but nervous. After some awkward small talk, I got to the point. Amanda, I need to ask you about something. When you broke up with me, you mentioned concerns about my family situation and reliability. I never understood what you meant, and it's been bothering me ever since. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Tony, that was 2 years ago. Why are you bringing this up now? Because I recently discovered that my family situation is very different from what I thought it was, and I'm wondering if that affected our relationship. Amanda stared into her coffee cup for a long time before speaking. Your mother called me about a month before I broke up with you. My stomach dropped. She called you. She said she was concerned about you and wanted to talk to someone who cared about your well-being. She told me you had been borrowing money from your parents repeatedly and refusing to pay it back. She said you had anger issues that you hid from me, and that she was worried you would drag me down financially if we got more serious. The betrayal was breathtaking. She told you I borrowed money and didn't pay it back. She said you had asked them for help with your rent multiple times, and that you got angry when they suggested you should budget better. She told me she thought you might have a gambling problem because you always seemed to need money but never had anything to show for it. None of this was true. I had never borrowed money from my parents. I had been giving them money every month while paying my own rent on time. But my mother had twisted reality completely, painting me as financially irresponsible and emotionally unstable. Amanda, did it ever occur to you that she might be lying? Why would a mother lie about her own son? Parents know their children better than anyone. I figured if she was worried enough to call me, there must be something to it. The manipulation was sophisticated. My mother had positioned herself as the concerned parent, trying to protect my girlfriend from my supposed problems. Amanda had trusted her because society teaches us that mothers are inherently protective and honest about their children. She also told me you had anger management issues. What kind of anger management issues? She said you would explode at family gatherings and make scenes. She said you had thrown things during arguments, and that she was afraid you might become violent in relationships when you got stressed about money. I was stunned. I had never thrown anything or raised my voice at family gatherings. If anything, I was too passive during family conflicts, always trying to keep peace. Did you believe her? Amanda looked ashamed. It planted a seed of doubt. Then I started noticing things that seemed to confirm what she said, like how you would get quiet when we talked about money, or how you seemed tense after visiting your family. I interpreted your behavior through the lens of what she had told me. My natural introversion and stress from being financially manipulated had been reframed as evidence of anger issues and instability. My mother had poisoned Amanda's perception of me. Then my normal reactions to that stress seemed to confirm her lies. I've felt guilty about the breakup ever since, Amanda continued. You never actually did anything wrong in our relationship. You were always kind and respectful to me. But her call made me second-guess everything. After leaving Amanda, I decided to investigate further. I drove to my neighborhood and found my neighbor Carl working in his yard. Carl, can I ask you something? Have my parents ever said anything about me to you or other neighbors? Carl stopped pruning his roses and looked uncomfortable. Tony, I don't like to get involved in family business. Please, it's important. He sighed and set down his pruning shears. Your father mentioned a few months ago that he was worried about your line of work. He said you were involved in something that made enough money to help them out, but he wasn't sure it was completely legitimate. He said my work wasn't legitimate. He didn't come right out and say it, but he implied that you might be involved in something shady. He said young guys don't usually have enough money to support their parents unless there's something questionable going on. My job as a project manager for a construction company was completely legitimate and well documented, but my father had cast doubt on my character by suggesting my ability to help them financially was suspicious. Did he say anything else? Your mother mentioned to my wife that they were concerned about your anger issues. She said you had trouble controlling your temper, and that's why you didn't come around very often. The same lies they had told Amanda were being spread throughout our neighborhood. They were systematically destroying my reputation while benefiting from my support. But the most devastating discovery came when I contacted my former boss Marcus, who had recently left the construction company for a new position. I asked him to meet me for drinks after work. Marcus, I need to ask you about something confidential. Did my parents ever contact you about me while you were my supervisor? His expression immediately grew serious. How did you know about that? They contacted you. Marcus ordered another beer before answering. About 2 years ago, your mother called the office. She said she was a concerned parent who wanted to make sure we knew about some personal struggles you were having. What kind of struggles? She said you were dealing with substance abuse issues and anger management problems. She told me she was worried these problems might affect your work performance and wanted us to keep an eye on you. My career advancement had been sabotaged by my own mother. Did you believe her? I didn't know what to believe. You had always been a reliable employee, but the call made me more cautious about giving you additional responsibilities. It probably delayed your promotion by at least 6 months, while I waited to see if any problems would surface. 6 months of delayed promotion meant thousands of dollars in lost income, all because my mother had decided to interfere with my professional life. She also said she was concerned you might have financial problems because you were always asking them for money. The irony was suffocating. She had damaged my career prospects by claiming I had financial problems, when the reality was that I was supporting them financially while they spread lies about my character. Marcus, in the 2 years after that call, did you ever see any evidence of substance abuse or anger problems? No. If anything, you seemed more focused and dedicated than before. That's why I eventually recommended you for the promotion despite my initial concerns. My parents had nearly destroyed my career advancement with their lies, and only my actual job performance had overcome the damage they caused. As I drove home that evening, I realized the full scope of their campaign against me. They had systematically targeted my romantic relationships, my neighborhood reputation, and my career prospects while taking my money every month. They weren't just financially exploiting me. They were actively sabotaging my life while benefiting from my success. But the most chilling realization was how calculated it all was. These weren't random lies told in moments of anger. They had crafted specific stories designed to damage different aspects of my life while ensuring I remained isolated and dependent on their approval. Every dollar I gave them funded their comfortable lifestyle while they worked to ensure I would have nowhere else to turn when their manipulation finally became unbearable. They wanted me financially and emotionally dependent on them so they could continue their exploitation indefinitely. But I was done being their victim. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day documenting everything I had discovered. I made a detailed timeline of every financial transaction, every lie my parents had told, and every relationship they had damaged. I printed bank statements, took screenshots of their social media posts showing luxury purchases, and wrote down exact quotes from my conversations with Amanda, Marcus, and family members. Then I called my friend David, who worked as a paralegal at a small law firm downtown. David and I had known each other since college, and I trusted him completely. "Dave, I need legal advice about a family situation. Can you help me?" We met at his office that evening after his regular work hours. When I explained the situation and showed him my documentation, his expression grew increasingly serious. "Tony, this isn't just family drama. Your parents may have committed several crimes here." He pulled out a legal pad and started taking notes. "First, they intercepted your inheritance check and kept the money. That's mail fraud and theft. Second, if they lied on their tax returns by claiming you as a dependent while receiving your support payments, that's tax fraud. Third, the defamation to your employer could constitute intentional interference with business relationships. What can I do about it? You have options. But before we discuss legal action, let me run a public records search to see what else we can find." David accessed several databases through his law firm's account. Within an hour, he had uncovered information that made my blood run cold. "Tony, your parents filed a new will 6 months ago. Do you want to know what it says?" I nodded, though I already suspected what he would tell me. "They removed you completely as a beneficiary and left everything to Jessica. That includes their house, their life insurance policy, and all financial accounts." The final piece of their plan clicked into place. They had been systematically extracting money from me while positioning Jessica as their sole heir. Every dollar I contributed to their lifestyle was increasing the value of assets that would only benefit my sister. "There's more," David continued. "They've been claiming you as a dependent on their tax returns for the past 3 years while receiving your support payments. How is that possible? They're claiming you live with them, and they provide more than half your support. But since you've been giving them money, they're essentially double-dipping. They get money from you, then claim you as a tax deduction to reduce what they owe the government. The fraud was more extensive than I had imagined. They had created a system where they benefited from my support in multiple ways, while ensuring I would receive nothing in return. Dave, what would you recommend?" He leaned back in his chair and studied my documentation. "You could file criminal complaints for mail fraud, tax fraud, and theft. You could sue them for defamation. You could report their tax fraud to the IRS, but honestly, pursuing all of those options would be expensive and time-consuming, and you might not recover much money. Then what should I do? Take away their funding source, and let natural consequences handle the rest." David helped me understand that the most effective response was to cut off their financial support and expose their lies to the family members they had manipulated. Without my monthly payments, they would face immediate financial pressure, and without their carefully constructed false narratives, they would lose their social protection. "The joint account is the key," David explained. "You set it up, you're the primary account holder, and you've been the main source of deposits. You have every right to close it and withdraw your contributions." That evening, I went online and reviewed the account one more time. The current balance was $47,000, including my grandmother's inheritance money that they had hidden there. I calculated that roughly $25,000 came from my direct contributions over 3 years, and the rest came from grandmother's inheritance that should have been distributed to Jessica and me. I transferred the entire balance to a new account in only my name, then closed the joint account. But I wasn't done. I spent the next 2 days crafting a detailed letter explaining everything I had discovered. I included copies of bank statements showing my contributions, screenshots of their luxury purchases, and quotes from family members about the lies my parents had told. The letter was respectful, but absolutely thorough. I laid out 3 years of documented evidence and ended with a simple conclusion. I will no longer enable people who use my generosity to fund their lifestyle while destroying my character and relationships. I sent copies of this letter to Uncle Robert, Aunt Patricia, my cousin Beth, my other cousins and extended family members, and several of our family friends. I also sent copies to Carl and other neighbors who had heard my parents' lies about me, but I saved the most important copy for Jessica. I hand-delivered it to her apartment along with a separate note explaining that none of this was her fault, that I didn't blame her for accepting our parents' support, and that I hoped we could rebuild our sibling relationship based on honesty rather than manipulation. The letter included one final revelation that I had discovered through David's research. Our parents had taken out a life insurance policy 2 years ago with Jessica as the sole beneficiary. The premiums were being paid through automatic withdrawal from the joint account, which meant my monthly contributions had been funding a policy that would only benefit my sister. I had been unknowingly paying for my own exclusion from their legacy, but as I sent the final email containing my letter, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: peace. I was no longer funding my own abuse. By Tuesday morning, my phone started ringing non-stop. Uncle Robert called first, his voice thick with anger and disbelief. "Tony, I just read your letter. Is all of this true?" "Every single word, Uncle Robert. I have documentation for everything. Jesus Christ. I can't believe Gerald lied to me about Helen's inheritance. And Linda telling Patricia you were neglectful while you were sending them $800 a month? This is insane." Within hours, my parents' carefully constructed web of lies began falling apart. Aunt Patricia called my mother demanding explanations about the contradictions between her claims of poverty and her obvious wealth. Carl organized an impromptu neighborhood gathering where several families shared stories of my parents' lies about me. The most devastating blow came when Jessica called our parents and told them she was returning the $20,000 down payment for her house. "I can't live in a home that was purchased with money Tony sent to help you," she told them. "And I'm returning the car. I won't be part of this anymore." My mother's response, according to Jessica, was pure fury. "You ungrateful little bitch. After everything we've done for you, you're going to side with your jealous, manipulative brother." But Jessica stood firm. She had seen too much evidence to deny reality. By Wednesday, the financial consequences hit my parents hard. Without my monthly $800, they couldn't make their mortgage payment. Their credit cards, which they had been paying minimum balances on using my money, began accumulating interest charges they couldn't afford. The social consequences were even more severe. Family members who had been criticizing me for years now understood they had been manipulated. Several neighbors apologized for believing false rumors about my character, but instead of accepting responsibility, my parents doubled down on their victimization narrative. Thursday afternoon, my father showed up at my workplace, creating a scene in the lobby that required security intervention. He was screaming about ungrateful children and demanding that I stop this childish tantrum and restore their access to their money. "That money belongs to us," he shouted as security escorted him toward the exit. "You can't steal from your own family and expect to get away with it." The irony was breathtaking. He was accusing me of theft while standing in the lobby of the job he had nearly sabotaged with his lies to my boss. Friday brought the most desperate escalation yet. My mother called every family member she could reach, attempting damage control by claiming I had developed a gambling addiction and stolen their retirement savings. But her story fell apart immediately because too many people had already seen my letter with its detailed documentation. When lies didn't work, my parents hired an attorney specializing in elder law. They filed a legal complaint alleging that I had committed elder abuse by cutting off financial support they had become dependent on. Their lawyer argued that because I had established a pattern of regular support, withdrawing it suddenly constituted abandonment and financial abuse. They claimed I was retaliating against elderly parents who had simply tried to help both their children according to their different needs. But their legal strategy backfired spectacularly when my attorney David requested discovery of their financial records. The court documents revealed the full extent of their deception: the hidden inheritance money, their luxury purchases, their tax fraud, and their systematic lies to family members. The local newspaper picked up the story when my father's outburst at my workplace was captured on security cameras. The headline read, "Local man claims elder abuse after son discovers financial deception." The article detailed how I had been supporting parents who were secretly wealthy while they spread lies about my character. Community reaction was overwhelmingly supportive of my position. Comments on the newspaper's website praised me for standing up to manipulative family members and setting healthy boundaries. But the most satisfying consequence came when their mortgage company discovered the legal proceedings and began investigating their loan modification application from 2 years earlier. They had claimed financial hardship and minimized their assets to secure favorable terms, but the court documents revealed they had been hiding substantial assets and income sources. The mortgage company initiated its own fraud investigation, which could result in acceleration of their entire loan balance. Jessica found herself caught in an impossible position. Our parents demanded she choose sides, threatening to cut off all relationship with her if she continued supporting me. But Jessica had seen too much evidence to pretend their behavior was acceptable. "I can't unsee what they did to you," she told me over dinner, "and I can't pretend that taking their money while knowing where it came from would be ethical." She made the difficult decision to distance herself from our parents' legal strategy and return all the money they had given her. This choice cost her the monthly support and the house down payment, but it allowed her to rebuild her relationship with me based on honesty and mutual respect. Our parents' isolation became complete when their attorney withdrew from the case. David had provided overwhelming evidence that his clients had committed fraud, making their claims of victimization legally impossible to defend. Facing potential criminal charges for tax fraud and mail theft, my parents finally requested mediation through David's office. They wanted to negotiate a resolution before their legal problems became even more serious. After months of lies, manipulation, and attempted legal intimidation, they were finally ready to face consequences for their actions. But I was no longer interested in quick fixes or partial accountability. If we were going to resolve this situation, it would be on terms that ensured they could never exploit me or anyone else in our family again. The mediation session took place in David's conference room on a cold morning in December. My parents arrived looking older and more defeated than I had ever seen them. Their expensive clothes and confident demeanor had been replaced by cheap outfits and nervous energy. For the first time in years, they were facing consequences they couldn't manipulate or escape. David had prepared thoroughly. He presented a timeline of their fraud, documentation of their lies to family members, evidence of their intercepted mail, and calculations showing they owed me approximately $35,000 in stolen support payments and inheritance money. But more importantly, he had contacted the IRS about their fraudulent tax returns and the postal inspector about their mail fraud. Criminal charges were possible unless they agreed to make full restitution and accept responsibility for their actions. Faced with potential prosecution, my parents finally broke down. My mother spoke first, her voice shaking with tears. "Tony, I know what we did was wrong, but you have to understand, we were terrified of getting older and not having enough money. When you started helping us, it felt like a safety net. Then it became normal, and we started to depend on it. But why lie about me to everyone?" Her answer revealed the depth of their psychological manipulation. "Because if everyone thought you were generous and responsible, they would expect us to be grateful and happy all the time. But we felt guilty taking your money, so we convinced ourselves and everyone else that you weren't doing enough. It made us feel less guilty about accepting your help." Gerald's confession was more calculated but equally revealing. "We favored Jessica because she seemed to need more help. You were always independent and successful, which made us feel like failures as parents. Supporting Jessica made us feel important and needed in a way we never felt with you." The twisted logic was stunning. My success and independence had made them feel inadequate, so they punished me for thriving while rewarding Jessica for needing them. They had created a system where my strength was treated as a character flaw while dependency was rewarded. But understanding their motivations didn't excuse their actions. David outlined the terms for resolution. They would publicly apologize to every family member and neighbor they had lied to, seek financial counseling to manage their legitimate resources, and have no contact with me for 2 years while they worked on themselves. In exchange, I would not pursue criminal charges, and I would help them avoid prosecution by providing restitution documentation to the authorities. But I added one more condition that surprised everyone in the room. I want to establish a small emergency fund for them, but only accessible through a financial counselor who can verify legitimate emergencies. David looked confused. Tony, why would you want to help them after everything they've done? Because cutting them off completely would make me just as manipulative as they were. The difference between support and enablement is structure and accountability. I used $15,000 from the joint account, which legally belonged to them, but morally represented my contributions, to establish a supervised emergency fund. They could access it only for genuine medical emergencies or housing crises, and only with verification from a licensed financial counselor. This arrangement protected them from true catastrophes, while preventing them from using emotional manipulation to extract money for luxuries or poor financial decisions. The broader resolution had profound effects on our entire family dynamic. Jessica used the experience as motivation to become completely financially independent, starting her own business and building genuine wealth through hard work rather than parental support. Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia became much more involved in holding family members accountable for their actions, ending the culture of enabling bad behavior for the sake of family peace. Most importantly, the truth about my character and contributions became widely known throughout our extended family and community. Relatives who had criticized me for years now understood they had been manipulated into believing lies. 6 months later, my life had transformed in ways I never expected. My relationship with Sarah deepened because she had witnessed my strength in setting boundaries with toxic family members. She said watching me choose self-respect over family approval had shown her what real integrity looked like. Amanda reached out to apologize and express admiration for how I handled the situation. While we didn't restart our romantic relationship, we rebuilt a genuine friendship based on honesty about how my parents had manipulated her perceptions. My career prospects improved dramatically when the truth about my character became known. Marcus, my former boss, recommended me for a senior position at a major development company, citing my integrity under pressure as a key qualification. But the most meaningful change was in my relationship with Jessica. For the first time in our lives, we had a sibling bond based on mutual respect and honesty rather than competition for parental approval. We established new family traditions that didn't involve our parents, creating the loving family dynamic we never had growing up. Jessica later told me that watching me stand up for myself had inspired her to examine other relationships in her life where she accepted poor treatment to avoid conflict. The experience taught me profound lessons about love, respect, and healthy boundaries. I had spent years believing that love required acceptance of any behavior, that supporting family meant enabling their worst impulses, and that loyalty demanded silence in the face of abuse. But real love sometimes means allowing people to face consequences for their choices rather than rescuing them from their own behavior. True family support means helping people become their best selves, not funding their dysfunction. Most importantly, I learned that protecting yourself from exploitation isn't selfish or cruel. It's necessary for building authentic relationships that honor everyone's dignity and worth. 2 years later, my parents completed their financial counseling and sent me a letter requesting renewed contact. The letter was different from anything they had ever written to me before. It contained genuine accountability for their actions, specific acknowledgments of how they had harmed me and others, and realistic plans for building healthier relationships going forward. We started with monthly phone calls, then occasional family dinners, always with clear boundaries about respectful behavior and honest communication. The relationship we built was smaller but infinitely more genuine than what we had before. During one of those dinners, my mother said something that brought our healing full circle. Tony, I spent so many years resenting your independence that I forgot to feel proud of the man you became. I'm sorry it took losing you completely for me to understand what I had. The final test of our new relationship came when I baked a birthday cake for her 70th birthday. When I arrived at their house with the homemade chocolate cake, my father stood up from his recliner and said, "Thank you, son. That means more to me than you know." This time, my mother accepted the cake with genuine gratitude, placed it carefully on the kitchen counter, and gave me the first sincere hug I had received from her in decades. As I reflect on this journey, I understand that the most loving thing I did for everyone involved was to stop enabling destructive behavior and start modeling healthy relationships. My parents needed to face consequences to learn and grow. Jessica needed to see what integrity looked like under pressure. And I needed to learn that my worth as a person wasn't determined by how much abuse I was willing to accept. The life lesson that emerged from this painful experience brings me peace. You cannot earn love through payment or endure your way to respect. Healthy relationships require mutual care, honest communication, and respect for boundaries. When those elements are missing, the most loving response is to protect your own dignity while allowing others to choose whether they want to do the work necessary to build something genuine. Setting boundaries isn't punishment, it's protection. And sometimes protecting yourself is the best gift you can give to everyone around you. I want to ask you something. Have you ever found yourself supporting someone who was taking your help for granted while treating you poorly? How did you handle that situation? Share your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life experiences about setting boundaries and building healthier relationships. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message about the difference between love and enablement, please share this video with them. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you recognize your own worth and build the respectful relationships you deserve.